The day started like any other. I was in the middle of cramming for my psychology midterm, surrounded by a fortress of textbooks and coffee cups in my small, cluttered apartment. The early morning sun streamed through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room, but I barely noticed, too absorbed in my notes. My phone buzzed on the table, pulling me out of my focused state. At first, I ignored it. No one ever called me this early except for spam members or the occasional telemarketer. But the buzzing persisted, insistent and unrelenting. With a sigh, I pushed my books aside and reached for the phone, expecting some automated message. "Hello," I answered, my voice a little too sharp from lack of sleep. "Good morning. Is this Emma Wallace?" The voice on the other end was deep and smooth, with a slight edge of formality that made me sit up a little straighter. "Yes, this is she," I replied, suddenly wary. "Who's calling?" "This is Robert Harper, an attorney at Mason and Harper Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of your great-uncle, Henry Thompson." The name hit me like a cold splash of water. Uncle Henry? I hadn't heard his name in years, not since the last time my parents dragged me to visit his old, creaky house when I was still in high school. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" I asked, needing him to repeat it just to be sure I wasn't imagining things. "I understand this may come as a surprise, but your great-uncle, Henry Thompson, passed away last week. As his closest living relative, you've been named as the sole beneficiary of his estate." I blinked, trying to process the words. Beneficiary? But I barely knew him. Why would he leave anything to me? There was a brief pause on the other end, and I could almost hear the lawyer flipping through papers. Mr. Thompson was a very private man. From what I understand, he had few connections with the rest of the family. However, he specifically named you in his will, Miss Wallace. It's important that you come to my office as soon as possible so we can discuss the details. I sat there, phone clutched to my ear, trying to wrap my head around it. Uncle Henry had left me his estate. What estate? The only thing I remembered about him was his small, dilapidated house and his quiet, solitary existence. The idea that he had anything of value to leave behind seemed absurd. Oh, okay, I stammered, my mind racing. When should I come in? Would tomorrow morning work for you? Say, 10 a.m.? "Yeah, that's fine," I replied automatically, my thoughts still a whirlwind of confusion. "I'll be there." "Excellent. I'll have everything prepared. I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Wallace, and I look forward to meeting you." The call ended, leaving me staring at the phone in disbelief. My roommate, Olivia, walked into the living room at that moment, a towel wrapped around her head, fresh from the shower. She gave me a curious look when she saw my expression. "Emma, you look like you've seen a ghost. What happened?" "I just got a call from a lawyer," I said, still dazed. "My great-uncle Henry. He died and apparently left everything to me." "Wait, Uncle Henry? The one with the creepy house at the edge of town? I thought you said he was broke or something." "That's what I thought too," I replied, shaking my head. "I barely knew him live. We only visited him a few times, and those visits were, well, let's just say they were always awkward and quiet." Olivia sat down across from me, her eyes wide with interest. "So what did the lawyer say? Are you, like, rich now or something?" "I have no idea. He said I need to go to his office tomorrow to go over the details." I ran a hand through my hair, still trying to grasp the situation. "I don't know, Liv. This is just so weird." "Well, maybe it's not as bad as it sounds," Olivia offered, trying to be optimistic. "Maybe he left you a secret fortune, and you're going to find out you're actually loaded." I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Yeah, right. Knowing my luck, it's probably a stack of old newspapers and a rusty typewriter. "Hey, you never know," she teased, but then her expression softened. "But seriously, if you need someone to go with you tomorrow, I'm here. It sounds like it could be a lot to handle on your own." "Thanks, Liv," I said, grateful for the support. "I think I'll be okay. It's just, I don't know what to expect." She nodded, giving me a reassuring smile. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. And who knows? Maybe this will be the start of something new." As I sat back down to my books, I couldn't shake the feeling that Olivia might be right. Uncle Henry had been an enigma, a man who lived on the fringes of our lives and seemed to disappear into the background. But now, with that one phone call, He was suddenly at the center of my world, pulling me into a mystery I never expected. What had Uncle Henry been hiding all these years? And why had he chosen me to uncover it? The questions swirled in my mind as I tried to focus on my studies, but I knew there would be no easy answers. Tomorrow, I would step into a world of secrets, one that had been carefully hidden away until now. The following day arrived with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I woke up early, the events of yesterday still swirling in my mind like a persistent fog. My alarm buzzed relentlessly, but sleep had eluded me, replaced instead by restless thoughts about Uncle Henry and the mysterious legacy he had left behind. After a hurried breakfast with Olivia, who had offered to help me prepare, I grabbed my bag and headed out to Mason and Harper Associates. The city was bustling as usual, but my focus was entirely on the impending meeting. Every step towards the lawyer's office felt heavier, as if the ground itself was pulling me deeper into the unknown. When I arrived, the glass doors of the office gleamed under the morning sun. I took a deep breath and walked inside, feeling the cool, air-conditioned breeze wash over me. Olivia gave me a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder before I entered the reception area. "Good morning, Miss Wallace. Mr. Harper is expecting you," the receptionist said with a warm smile. I nodded and followed the receptionist down a quiet hallway to a conference room. The room was sleek and modern, a stark contrast to Uncle Henry's old, creaky house. Mr. Robert Harper stood up to greet me, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and sharp, intelligent eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. "Emma, it's good to finally meet you in person," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm and his demeanor professional yet compassionate. "Thank you, Mr. Harper," I replied, taking a seat across from him. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to steady my nerves. He gestured to a chair opposite him and began to speak, his voice measured and deliberate. "As I mentioned over the phone, your great-uncle Henry Thompson has passed away. He was a private man, but he made provisions in his will that have brought you to my office today." I nodded, trying to absorb the information. I still don't understand why he left everything to me. We weren't close. Mr. Harper sighed softly. "That's what makes this case particularly interesting. Henry was indeed a solitary figure, but upon reviewing his documents, we discovered that he had amassed a modest estate over the years. More importantly, there are several letters he wrote, letters that suggest there's more to his story than meets the eye." He slid a manila folder across the table towards me. Inside were neatly arranged letters, tied together with a faded ribbon. I picked them up, feeling the weight of history in my hands. The letters were dated, spanning several decades, and each one was addressed to a woman named Eleanor. As I began to read, I could almost hear Uncle Henry's voice, the ink revealing his emotions with each word. March 12, 1985. Dear Eleanor, I find myself yearning for the days we spent by the river, the way your laughter echoed in the twilight. These quiet moments are the only solace I have in this chaotic world. Yours always, Henry. My fingers traced the elegant handwriting, each stroke a glimpse into a past I never knew. The letter spoke of a deep, abiding love, a love that seemed both passionate and fraught with tension. "Who is Eleanor?" I asked, looking up from the letter. Mr. Harper leaned back in his chair, contemplating. "From what I can gather, Eleanor was a woman deeply connected to your great-uncle. However, her exact relationship to him isn't entirely clear from the documents we have. There are references to shared secrets and promises that suggest a significant bond." I felt a knot form in my stomach. But why wasn't she mentioned in any family records? Why did Uncle Henry keep this hidden? He shrugged slightly. "Perhaps Eleanor was someone your family didn't approve of, or maybe their relationship was complicated by circumstances we're not yet aware of. It's clear that these letters hold the key to understanding the true nature of his legacy." I looked down at the letters again, a sense of responsibility settling over me. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about uncovering the truth of my family's past. As I continued to read, the letters revealed a narrative of love, loss, and sacrifice. Eleanor and Henry had shared dreams and plans, but something had derailed their lives. There were mentions of a hidden project, a promise to return, and an unspoken threat that kept them apart. One letter, dated just a week before Henry's death, stood out. August 24, 2023. Dear Eleanor, I fear that my time is running out. There are things I've kept hidden for too long, secrets that could change everything if they ever come to light. Please, if anything happens to me, find a way to protect what we built together. Our legacy must not be forgotten. Forever yours, Henry. A chill ran down my spine. What secrets had Henry been protecting? And how did Eleanor fit into all of this? Do you think these letters are part of his estate? I asked, my mind racing with possibilities. Mr. Harper nodded. Absolutely. There are references to assets and properties in some of the letters, but without knowing who Eleanor is or where she is now, it's difficult to piece everything together. I recommend we start by trying to locate her. She may hold the answers we need. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the task ahead. All right, where do we start? He handed me a business card. I've already initiated a background check based on the information we have. In the meantime, you might want to talk to your family, especially your mother and brother. They might have insights or memories that could help us locate Eleanor. As I left the office, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the city streets. Olivia was waiting for me outside, her face etched with concern. How did it go? She asked, pulling me into a supportive hug. I let out a shaky breath. We found a bunch of letters from Uncle Henry to someone named Eleanor. It seems there's a lot more to this story than I realized. She pulled back, her eyes bright with curiosity. Eleanor? Do you have any idea who she is? I shook my head. Not yet, but Mr. Harper thinks she might hold the key to everything. I have a feeling this is just the beginning. As we walked back to my apartment, the letters weighed heavily on my mind. Uncle Henry's legacy was shrouded in mystery, and it was up to me to unravel the threads of his past. Questions swirled in my head. Who was Eleanor? What secrets was Henry hiding? And how would uncovering the truth affect my own life and the lives of those around me? That night, I couldn't sleep. The letters lay spread out on my kitchen table, their contents haunting my thoughts. I reached for my phone and called my brother Tom, hoping he could shed some light on Uncle Henry's elusive history. Hey, Tom, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Do you have a minute? Sure am. What's up? His voice was warm, a comforting presence amid the storm of emotions I was feeling. I need to ask you something about Uncle Henry, I said cautiously. I found some letters he wrote to a woman named Eleanor. Do you know anything about her? There was a long pause on the other end. Eleanor? I haven't heard that name in years. Are you sure you're okay? I sighed, frustration bubbling up. I'm fine, just confused. Uncle Henry never talked about Eleanor, and there's no mention of her in any of our family records. I think there's more to this story than we knew. Tom was silent for a moment before responding. Maybe Eleanor was someone he kept separate from the family. It's possible she wasn't part of our immediate circle, or maybe she lived far away. I bit my lip, considering his words. Do you remember anything unusual about Uncle Henry? Any secret meetings or strange behavior? He thought for a moment. Now that you mention it, he was always a bit secretive, especially about his finances. He rarely talked about his work or where he spent his money. I'd assumed it was just his way of being private. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. That's what I'm starting to think. There's something he wanted to protect, and it seems like Eleanor is part of that. There was a brief silence before Tom spoke again. If you're serious about digging into this, you have my support. Let me know how I can help. I felt a surge of gratitude. Thanks, Tom. I might need your help with some research. Let's see if we can find any connections or leads on Eleanor. As I hummed up, the pieces of the puzzle were beginning to take shape, but the picture was still incomplete. Uncle Henry's legacy was more than just an inheritance. It was a gateway to uncovering family secrets that had been buried for decades. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I resolved to dive deeper, no matter where the journey might lead. The night grew darker and the city lights twinkled outside my window, mirroring the stars above. Somewhere out there, Eleanor was a key piece in the story of my family's past, and perhaps the key to our future. The days following my discovery of Uncle Henry's letters were a blur of research, late-night conversations with Tom, and a growing sense of intrigue. Each letter I uncovered seemed to hint at something bigger, something that had been hidden from the family for years. The more I read, the more I realized that Henry Thompson had been anything but a lonely old man. He was a man with secrets, secrets that were now my responsibility to uncover. One afternoon, I received a call from Mr. Harper, the lawyer. His voice was calm and professional, but there was an undercurrent of excitement that I hadn't heard before. "Emma, I've found something that I think you need to see," he said. "It's about a property that your great-uncle owned, one that wasn't mentioned in his official will." My heart skipped a beat. "A property? Where is it?" "It's located just outside the city, in a secluded area near the old forest. The records indicate that Henry purchased it several decades ago, but he never disclosed its existence to anyone. I believe it may be connected to the letters you found." I felt a surge of anticipation. "When can we go see it?" "I can arrange for us to visit tomorrow morning. It might be best if you come prepared. The property hasn't been maintained for years, and it's likely in a state of disrepair." "Tomorrow works," I replied, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. "I'll meet you there." The next morning, I drove out to the address Mr. Harper had given me. The city slowly faded away behind me, replaced by winding roads and dense forests. The air grew cooler as I approached the outskirts, where civilization seemed like a distant memory. I couldn't help but wonder what secrets Uncle Henry had hidden away in this remote location. When I arrived, I was greeted by the sight of an old, weathered gate. It creaked ominously as I pushed it open, revealing a long, overgrown driveway that led to a sprawling estate hidden among the trees. The house itself was massive, a two-story stone building with ivy creeping up its walls. Despite its dilapidated state, there was a sense of grandeur about it, as if it had once been a place of great importance. Mr. Harper was already there, waiting for me at the entrance. He nodded in greeting as I approached, his expression serious. "Emma, this is the place," he said, gesturing to the house. "The records show that your great-uncle purchased this estate in the 1970s, but for some reason he kept it off the books. It's as if he didn't want anyone to know about it." I took in the sight of the house, my mind racing with possibilities. Why would he keep something like this hidden? It's huge, bigger than anything I imagined he'd own. Mr. Harper shrugged. "That's what we're here to find out. I've already arranged for the locks to be changed, so we can explore the property freely. There's no telling what we might find inside." Together, we made our way up the steps and into the house. The door creaked as it opened, revealing a grand foyer covered in dust and cobwebs. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and decay, as if the house had been untouched for years. I glanced around, trying to imagine what the house had looked like in its prime. There were signs of wealth and refinement, ornate chandeliers, intricate woodwork, and faded tapestries that hinted at a time when the estate had been full of life. But now it was a ghost of its former self, a relic of a past that had been carefully concealed. "Let's start by checking the main rooms," Mr. Harper suggested. "There might be something here that can give us a clue as to why your uncle kept this place hidden." We moved through the house, our footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Each room was more intriguing than the last. We found a library filled with old, leather-bound books, a dining room with a massive table that could seat 20, and a sitting room with a grand piano covered in dust. In one of the upstairs bedrooms, we discovered an old trunk, its surface scratched and worn from years of use. I felt a strange sense of déjà vu as I approached it, as if I had seen it before in a distant memory. "Do you think it's locked?" I asked, glancing at Mr. Harper. "Only one way to find out," he replied, handing me a pair of gloves. "Better to be safe. There's no telling what might be inside." With a deep breath, I opened the trunk. Inside were a collection of personal items, photographs, letters, and a small locked box. The photos were old, black and white images of people I didn't recognize, but one photo stood out. It was of a young woman, her face turned slightly away from the camera, but her expression unmistakable. She was Eleanor. "Mr. Harper, look at this," I said, holding up the photo. "This must be Eleanor. She's the woman from the letters." He took the photo from me, examining it closely. "It certainly seems like her, and if these items belong to her, it's possible she lived here at some point. But why would Uncle Henry hide this place? And why keep it from the rest of the family?" I wondered aloud, the pieces of the puzzle still not fitting together. Perhaps he was protecting something or someone, Mr. Harper suggested. There's one more room we haven't checked. The records mention a study on the first floor. If there's any place where he might have kept important documents, it would be there. We made our way back downstairs to the study, a small, cozy room tucked away at the end of a hallway. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and a large mahogany desk dominated the center of the room. On the desk was an old, leather-bound journal, its pages yellow with age. "This could be it," Mr. Harper said, picking up the journal. "If your uncle kept any records, they might be in here." He handed me the journal, and I carefully opened it. The pages were filled with Henry's neat, meticulous handwriting, detailing everything from his daily routines to his thoughts on various subjects. But as I flipped through the pages, I noticed a recurring theme: Eleanor. The entries were filled with references to their relationship, their shared secrets, and a project they had been working on together. There were mentions of meetings at the estate, discussions about the future, and cryptic notes about something they called the plan. "What is the plan?" I asked, reading one of the entries aloud. "He keeps mentioning it, but never explains what it is." Mr. Harper frowned, deep in thought. It's possible that the plan was something they were working on together, something that requires secrecy. If we can figure out what it was, we might be able to understand why your uncle went to such lengths to keep this estate hidden. As we continued to read, the entries grew more urgent, more desperate. Henry wrote about threats, about people who couldn't be trusted, and about the need to protect what they had built. It was clear that whatever the plan was, it had been of great importance to both Henry and Eleanor, and it had placed them in danger. "We need to find that lockbox," I said, remembering the small box we had found in the trunk. "There might be something inside that can give us more answers." We returned to the trunk, and I picked up the box, examining it closely. There was no key, and the lock was old and rusted. Mr. Harper handed me a small set of tools, and after a few minutes of careful work, the lock clicked open. Inside the box was a single document, carefully folded and sealed with a wax emblem. I opened it with trembling hands, revealing a legal contract that named Henry Thompson and Eleanor as joint owners of a series of properties that were linked to something called the Eleanor Trust. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Harper's eyes widened as he read over the document. "The Eleanor Trust, it's a legal entity that Henry and Eleanor created together. According to this, they were pooling their resources to fund a series of projects, charitable endeavors from the looks of it. But it seems that something went wrong, and they had to hide everything to protect it." "But why?" I asked, still trying to make sense of it all. "Maybe someone found out," Mr. Harper speculated. "Someone who wanted to take control of the trust, or who saw it as a threat. It's possible that Henry hid the estate and kept it off the books to protect Eleanor and the work they were doing." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Uncle Henry wasn't just hiding this estate. He was protecting Eleanor and everything they had built together. That's why he kept it a secret, even from the family. Mr. Harper nodded. "And now it's up to you to decide what to do with it. The trust still exists, but without Henry and Eleanor, its future is uncertain." I looked around the old, forgotten estate, feeling a deep sense of connection to the man I had barely known. Uncle Henry's legacy was more than just a hidden house and a series of mysterious letters. It was a testament to his love for Eleanor and his dedication to something greater than himself. "We need to find out what happened to Eleanor," I said, determination in my voice. "She deserves to know that the trust is still here, and that Henry's work didn't die with him." Mr. Harper smiled slightly. "I agree. And with the information we have now, we might be able to track her down." As we left the estate, I couldn't help but feel that I was on the brink of discovering something monumental, something that could change my life and the lives of those around me forever. Uncle Henry's hidden estate was just the beginning, and I was determined to uncover the full extent of his legacy, no matter what it took. The discovery of the hidden estate left me reeling, but there was no time to dwell on the enormity of what I'd uncovered. My mind raced with questions. Who was Eleanor really? What was the Eleanor Trust? And most pressing of all, why had Uncle Henry gone to such lengths to conceal everything? After returning from the estate, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the small wooden box I had brought home. It was unremarkable at first glance, an old, slightly worn box with delicate carvings along the edges. But I had learned not to underestimate anything connected to Uncle Henry. There was no telling what secrets it might hold. Tom joined me at the table, his eyes fixed on the box as if it were a ticking time bomb. "What do you think is inside?" he asked, his voice laced with curiosity. "I don't know," I admitted, running my fingers over the smooth wood. "But I have a feeling it's important. Uncle Henry wouldn't have kept it if it wasn't." Tom nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think it's connected to the trust? Maybe it has more documents or something that explains the plan." "Maybe," I replied, though I wasn't entirely convinced. The box seemed too personal, too intimate to be filled with legal documents. Whatever was inside, I sensed it would be something much more meaningful. With a deep breath, I opened the box. Inside, I found a stack of yellow letters tied together with a faded blue ribbon. Beneath the letters was a small velvet pouch. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for the letters, carefully untying the ribbon. I unfolded the first letter and began to read. "My dearest Eleanor, I hope this letter finds you well. I've been thinking about you constantly since our last meeting. The work we're doing is difficult, but I believe in it with all my heart. I believe in us. I know the risks are great, but we must persevere. The Eleanor Trust will change lives. It will create a legacy that will last long after we're gone. I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will always protect you, just as I promised. Yours always, Henry." I felt a lump in my throat as I read Henry's words. This wasn't just a letter, it was a love letter, filled with emotion and dedication. It was clear that Henry and Eleanor had shared something profound, something that went far beyond the trust they had created together. Tom leaned in closer, reading over my shoulder. "They were in love," he said softly, as if he were piecing it all together. "This wasn't just about business for them. This was personal." "It explains so much," I whispered. "Why he kept everything hidden, why he was so secretive. He wasn't just protecting the trust, he was protecting her." I picked up the next letter, eager to learn more. As I read through the correspondence, it became increasingly clear that Henry and Eleanor had faced significant challenges. They spoke of obstacles, of people who sought to destroy their work, and of their shared determination to see the trust succeed despite the odds. But it was the final letter in the stack that truly took my breath away. "My dearest Henry, I'm writing this letter with a heavy heart. The danger has become too great, and I fear for our safety. We cannot continue like this. The trust is too important, but so are we. I've made arrangements to leave, to go somewhere safe where I can protect what we've built. I need you to know that this isn't goodbye. We will meet again, and when we do, we'll finally be free to live the life we've dreamed of. Until then, stay safe, my love. Trust that I will do everything in my power to ensure our legacy lives on. Yours forever, Eleanor." I set the letter down, my hands trembling. The story that had been unfolding before me was more tragic and beautiful than I could have imagined. Henry and Eleanor had been in love, fighting against the world to protect something they both believed in. But in the end, they had been forced to separate, driven apart by circumstances beyond their control. Tom broke the silence that had settled over us. "Do you think she ever left, or did something happen before she could?" "I don't know," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I think I need to find out. There has to be more to this story. Something that explains what happened to Eleanor and why Uncle Henry never mentioned her to anyone." I reached for the velvet pouch at the bottom of the box, my heart racing with anticipation. Inside, I found a delicate gold locket. It was simple, but elegant, with intricate engravings that formed the initials E. "This must have belonged to Eleanor," I said, holding the locket up to the light. "It's beautiful." Tom nodded, his gaze fixed on the locket. "It's more than that. It's a symbol of their love, something she left behind for him to remember her by." I opened the locket carefully, revealing a tiny photograph inside. It was a picture of Henry and Eleanor, standing side by side, their faces filled with joy. They looked so happy, so full of life and hope. It was a stark contrast to the secrecy and sadness that had defined the later years of Henry's life. "What do we do now?" Tom asked, his voice full of uncertainty. "We find out what happened to Eleanor," I said firmly. "There's still so much we don't know, and I won't rest until I've uncovered the truth. If she's still alive, she deserves to know what Henry did to protect her. And if she's not, then I'll make sure their legacy lives on, just as they intended." Tom smiled at me, a look of admiration in his eyes. "You're right, Emma. We owe it to them to finish what they started." As we sat there, surrounded by the remnants of a love story that had been hidden away for decades, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The wooden box had given me a glimpse into a world I never knew existed, a world of love, sacrifice, and unyielding dedication. And now it was up to me to bring that world to light, to ensure that Henry and Eleanor's legacy was remembered, not as a secret, but as a testament to the power of love and the strength of the human spirit. The discovery of the wooden box and the letters had left me reeling, but it also filled me with a sense of urgency. I knew that I couldn't keep what I found to myself. This was a story that needed to be shared with my family. Uncle Henry's secrets weren't just his own. They were a part of our history, a legacy that belonged to all of us. But I wasn't sure how they would react, especially given the mysterious nature of the Eleanor Trust and the hidden estate. I decided to call a family meeting. It was time to bring everyone together, to share what I'd uncovered and to figure out our next steps. As the eldest in the family, I felt the responsibility to handle this delicately, but I also knew that the truth had to come out. That evening, we gathered in the living room of my parents' house. The room was filled with a mix of curiosity, anxiety, and tension. My father, Richard, sat at the head of the table, his expression stern and unreadable. My mother, Elaine, was beside him, her hands folded neatly in her lap, but I could see the worry etched on her face. My younger sister, Lily, was there too, her arms crossed, looking as though she wasn't entirely sure why we were having this meeting. And of course, Tom was at my side, offering me silent support as I prepared to reveal what I discovered. "Thank you all for coming," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know this is sudden, but there's something important I need to share with you, something I found after Uncle Henry passed away." Richard raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "What is it, Emma? You've been acting strange ever since the funeral. What's going on?" I took a deep breath, glancing at Tom for reassurance before continuing. "It's about Uncle Henry's will, or rather, what wasn't in the will. I've discovered some things that he kept hidden from all of us." Elaine leaned forward, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What do you mean, hidden? What exactly did you find?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the wooden box, placing it on the table. This. Inside were letters, documents, and a locket, items that belonged to a woman named Eleanor. She was more than just a friend to Uncle Henry. They were in love, and they created something together called the Eleanor Trust. But for some reason, they had to keep it a secret. Lily frowned, leaning in to get a closer look at the box. A secret trust. Why would they need to hide it from the family? "That's what I've been trying to figure out," I replied. "The letters suggest that they were working on something important, something that could have put them in danger. Uncle Henry bought a hidden estate where they conducted their work in secret. I've been there, and I found more documents that indicate they were trying to protect their legacy. But something went wrong." My father exchanged a glance with my mother, his expression darkening. Why wasn't this brought to light earlier? If this trust was so important, why didn't Henry tell anyone? "Maybe he couldn't," I said softly. "The letters mentioned threats and the need to keep everything hidden to protect Eleanor. It's possible that Uncle Henry was protecting her by keeping this secret, even from us." Tom spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "Emma's right. We don't know the full story yet, but it's clear that Uncle Henry went to great lengths to keep this trust, and Eleanor's safe. Now that we know about it, we need to decide what to do next." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed what I had just revealed. I could see the gears turning in my father's mind, trying to piece together the implications of what we found. My mother's expression softened, a look of concern replacing the initial shock. Lily seemed more confused than anything, but I could tell she was trying to make sense of it all. Finally, Richard spoke, his voice measured. "This is a lot to take in, Emma. If what you're saying is true, then we need to be very careful about how we proceed. This trust, It could involve legal issues, financial implications, and even risks we don't fully understand. Elaine nodded in agreement, but we can't ignore it, Richard. If Henry went to such lengths to protect this trust, then it's our responsibility to honor that. We need to find out what he and Eleanor were working on and ensure that their legacy is preserved. Lily, who had been quiet up until now, finally spoke. But what if it's dangerous? What if there's a reason they kept it hidden? We don't know who these threats were or if they're still out there. I reached across the table, taking Lily's hand in mine. That's why we need to be careful, but we also need to be brave. Uncle Henry didn't want this trust to disappear. He wanted it to survive, and now it's up to us to make sure that happens. We owe it to him and to Eleanor. Tom chimed in, his voice filled with quiet resolve. We've already taken the first steps by uncovering the estate and the letters. Now we need to dig deeper, find out more about Eleanor and the trust, and see if there's anyone else who might know something. We can do this together as a family. There was a moment of silence as everyone processed what Tom had said. I could see the determination in my father's eyes, the resolve in my mother's expression, and the flicker of understanding in Lily's gaze. Despite the uncertainties, we were all united by one thing: the desire to honor Uncle Henry's memory and ensure that his legacy lived on. Richard finally nodded, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. All right then, we'll do this together, but we'll take it one step at a time and we'll be cautious. We need to gather more information before we make any decisions. Elaine placed her hand on his arm, her voice gentle but firm. And we'll need to trust each other. This won't be easy, but we have to stick together. Lily squeezed my hand, her previous apprehension replaced with a sense of determination. I'm in. Whatever it takes, we'll figure this out. I felt a surge of gratitude for my family for their willingness to join me on this journey despite the risks and uncertainties. Uncle Henry's secrets had brought us together in a way I hadn't expected, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them as a united front. As we sat around the table, discussing our next steps and planning our approach, I couldn't help but feel that we were on the brink of something monumental. The truth about the Eleanor Trust was still shrouded in mystery, but I was more determined than ever to uncover it. This wasn't just about solving the family mystery. It was about honoring the love and dedication that Henry and Eleanor had shared and ensuring that their legacy would never be forgotten. Little did we know, the answers we sought would lead us down a path that none of us could have anticipated, a path that would test our resolve, our trust in one another, and our understanding of what it truly meant to carry on a legacy. But in that moment, as we sat together in the warmth of the living room, I felt a sense of hope and determination that I hadn't felt in a long time. Whatever the future held, we were ready to face it together.